Lost control. Lost control. He found the book, now he's done.
All right. Listen, Warren told me to know so.
Anyway, all right, here we go. Talk a little bit. Tim asked me a great question. He said, hey, we've talked a lot about churches doing video as their delivery method. We haven't talked about churches doing live communication as their video, as their communication method. Tell me ladies always go first, so be prepared. Tell me the best model of live teaching that you know of out there and why you think it's a great model. You can defer to Rich.
I can defer to Rich. Best model of live teaching. What would you say are different models of live?
Well, just live teaching. Just they do live at every location.
Oh, do
live teaching, live communication at every location, preaching.
There's a church in Michigan called Kensington Church, if you're considering that. I think they're doing it the best. So they do the kind of big idea. It's kind of called the big idea preaching, which is really a community Christian thing out of Chicago. They perfected it there, where they have a teaching team who they prepare together, but it's all pointing in the same direction. So they're like, we agree that this is kind of the big point we're trying to drive across. They prepare in community, so they're talking to each other, they're figuring out like, hey, maybe this is how we're going to nuance that. But hey, I've got this great story from when I played football when I was in high school, but you've got this great story about when you were in ballet in high school or whatever. You talk about that together. And then they roll it out in their campuses, as their kind of, as their teaching team. Now they also do rotation, so they have campus pastors and a teaching team at Kensington, and those are separate from each other. And so they do a fair amount of rotation among their campuses as well. So you're not necessarily going to always have the same person, and they flip flop it. It'll be like, for this series, we're going to be in the same campus for the whole series, and they kind of move around. So they'd be interesting. If you're looking for a model, they'd be on top of my list. Community Christian has done a fair amount of that.
Any others that you would know on that?
Yeah, for me, we really studied video because of the route we went at both locations. But yeah.
There's the book, the guys from Community Christian wrote a book called Big Idea, which I think might be a leadership network product as well. I'd succeed one day.
Hey.
I don't know if it is or not. It's Community Christian, yeah. Is that a leadership network product? No?
I think they're doing their own
stuff.
Yeah,
but that's a great book.
You just lost your others. You got to figure it out.
I gotta come up with another competitive. Halftime. But that would be, if you're thinking about, that's a good framework. And they're crazy about it because they'll push the same. So if they're talking about 1 John, they'll push that all the way through, or in an ideal world, they'll push that all the way through to like infants.
Yep.
So they'll do the whole church is talking about the same big idea.
Yeah, it's a great resource.
Yeah, the only other thing I would add to that, I mentioned Christ Community. I can get to the name. They have a great model, which I think they do a great job of developing communicators as well. They have a fellows program. They bring in 3 seminary students a year who are last year. They pay for their school, and they develop them to be campus pastors. Teaching model. They do live teaching model. And they hire almost one of those guys just about every year to launch a new campus. But they just value live communication. They don't ever use video. They want it to be live. And so that's what they do. So it's a challenge. One of the things I think early on that we saw, I'm not sure this is still true. Rich, you may know this because you know a lot of the numbers. But it seems like that the live model worked most with churches that did like 1 location or 2 locations. But again, as you start developing communicators, if you have 5 campuses or 10 campuses, that's a pretty significant thing, which is I think why we just said, hey, we're going for a lot of campuses, so we have an easy way to replicate the weekend. It's called the video. I mean, again, so we had a real value of that.
Christ Community is where?
I'll have to look it up. It's in maybe Kansas. Okay. Missouri.
Middle of the country.
Yeah. Kevin Hart last the past. Kevin Hart. I can take you. All right. Another question.
Just on that, it's true that that's the most recent leadership effort study that came out showed that as churches get bigger, so the trend is the bigger the church and the more campuses, the more likely they are to use video more. So basically, as the movement gets larger and as there are more and more churches out there, or as your church launches more campuses, you're more likely to use video. So it can be seen as an early strategy. And also, I think there's the hard side of this. I've run into guys, I actually really appreciate teaching guys who, they're like, I'm not sure I like the video thing. Like our teaching guy, Liquid Tim, he would say, he was one of those like, this is the stupidest idea ever. Like, we'll just teach some guys to speak. I'm not gonna, I want there to be, I value that because I'm like, okay, that's a guy who's not obsessed with being on video. He doesn't want to get himself up in front of people. So.
Yeah, and Steph's just sort of challenging the video model now, it seems. He's sort of, I don't think this is the future of the church, and so I was just curious your perspective.
I don't know why. It seems like the teaching gift isn't as distributed. It's out as evenly as, as other gifts for some reason, which I don't know why that is, but that seems to be what happens.
Well, and you can do a little bit of both and too. Like, so for us, and actually in both contexts, both at Crosspoint and at Menlo, we will do video teaching for most of the weekends, but then our campus pastors will do video teaching, or not video teaching, they will teach locally in the campus like once a quarter. So, and then they're doing that together. They're building those messages together so that it's still like a shared, like, we're just making sure we're communicating and teaching the same thing at all the campuses, but they're working together to build those messages, and then they're getting coaching from John and Scotty, who are on our teaching team, helping develop those campus pastors into teachers. So that there can be a little bit of both and where you're trying to help develop your teachers and communicators, but also leaning into, like, again, in both contexts for me, our lead pastors are really strong communicators and teachers. And that was one of the best, one of the kind of the leading edge for us as a church and why people engaged was because of the strength of our teaching pastors. And so, knowing that's one of our strengths, we've had to lean into that and knew the video was probably the model that was going to help us reproduce that the most quickly with the most campuses and so forth. But like another great example of a large church that does it a different way is Hillsong. Hillsong is much more known for their worship experience. That's kind of their, leading edge, if you will, as a church. And they have great teachers and communicators, but then their local campus pastors at their campuses actually teach live. But then they have their worship cultures are very aligned and consistent. And so some of it is really deciding too, what are those areas that you guys are strongest in as a church and the thing that you need to reproduce the most tightly because it's the thing that's really core to your DNA. And then there might be latitude on whether it's worship or it's teaching or whatever. But
it seems to me that there's an opportunity there. If you have a campus pastor who's a good communicator, a good teacher, for him to take the video presentation and then embellish it, and then help his campus congregation process what they just heard. In effect, you've got the opportunity there for your campus to not only have the benefit of a great teacher on the video, but now you've got the campus pastor helping the congregation to process what the pastor has said. And so that for a gifted campus pastor, there's a great opportunity for him to take on that responsibility and use his gift in a very productive way.
Yeah, and I would say, we're going to end on this thought with this, but I would say the more I hear about like the video model, it doesn't mean one person teaches. I actually made a commitment in January to listen to 5 messages a week from other churches this year, so I've listened to more preaching this year than I've probably listened to ever. But just this morning, I listened to a message from Willow Creek, not Bill Hybels. I listened to a message from North Point, not Andy Stanley. And those are sometimes going to every campus, sometimes they're just for one campus, on and on. So in our model as well, whoever teaches for the weekend is who goes to all the campuses. And so it still can be use a team approach. All right, second question I'm going to ask really quickly. What does it cost to launch a campus?
That's a good question.
Give us the Nashville cost.
So, yes.
Your mic is on.
I think it's on just
We just recorded.
the recording.
Yeah. Do you need it in the room? Because I can.
Okay, so this is really good. Let's take this even more specific for you. Campus one at Cross Point, what did it cost?
Campus one at Cross Point cost $150,000. We launched in a high school, so temporary location, so it was mostly our portable
Gotcha.
gear.
Okay.
Yes.
So Campus 3 at Menlo, what will it cost?
Hey,
to
can I
launch?
qualify this just a second? Are we talking, give us launch and then give us total first year?
Okay.
What was your budget for the first year?
Budget for the first year, I believe, for that campus was about $300,000. Was the annual budget.
So Menlo Park, third campus, what's it going to cost?
About $3 million.
Okay. It's going to be in a permanent location?
It will be in a leased facility that is, it'll be $2 to $3 million. So we're still finding our location, so that is a little bit of variable. Right, yeah.
That's a big two.
First year budget for that location.
First year budget for that location is about $800,000 to $1 million.
Okay. All right.
Now, I mean, cost of living, remember, most expensive place in the nation right now to live. So just caveat.
Yeah.
So it's even cheaper to go to heaven for me.
All right. So here we go, Rich. First Liquid Church multi-site campus. What did it cost to launch it?
So Kat, let's say the model we like now, because the first one we way overspent. So we settled at $350,000 of upfront costs. So that's prior to launch. Right? The vast majority of that's in technology. And
First year budget.
first year is about the same, just north of 300 for that first year.
Okay. Okay, I've got another follow-up for that.
Yeah.
The two different perspectives.
Yep.
Let's go for you. You have that. In Nashville, first campus you launched, the staff that you paid, who were they?
Paid staff at launch was a full-time campus pastor and a part-time children's director.
Okay, now let's fast forward. Campus 3 at Menlo, what will the staff be?
Staff will be, we've already hired a full-time campus pastor who's helping work towards launch. And by the time we launch, we will have added 2 additional full-time positions.
Okay, very good. For you guys, model.
So we're 4.5 full-time equivalents at launch. So that's full-time campus pastor, and then full-time either associate campus pastor that I was just talking about, or what we call a connections coordinator. They're basically doing the same functional work, but it's whether we're defining them as like a full-time, whether they're going to actually be a campus pastor. And then we do 2 part-time family ministry people, so that makes up the third. And then the other,
What's family ministry?
so kids through students. So and it's a little different depending, each campus is a little bit nuanced on that, what they're hiring, but it's 2 part-time people that make up the full. And then the other 1.5 is a part-time music, part-time production, part-time roadies. So someone who's just responsible for making sure things set up here. So 4.5, which for us, if I can be completely honest, this is me recording. We
Don't be completely honest.
We
Talk
might-
about another church that you know about.
we wondered if there are other churches out there that our campuses are settling out at 500-600, which for us feels small. Like we want to continue to push the growth on that, and we're wondering if 4.5 is too heavy of a staff. Well, we convinced it's too heavy of a staff model for where our campuses are settling out, and so there's active internal conversation about potentially trimming some of that back.
Yeah. So for us, we would start with a full-time campus pastor, a part-time worship, whatever they are, director, pastor, and then a part-time children's director, pastor, whatever. That's really our 3. And then quickly after that, we'll likely add students depending on the location. And one of the great things that I would challenge you to research, not now because you really don't, I don't think you need to now, you guys can disagree with this, but I would really research, and we can maybe make available on the Facebook site if I can find it. But like Seacoast has a really good staffing matrix, which I love because it answers the question for campus pastors. So right, I don't know about you guys, but that's a great thing for you to be able to have is, hey, when you're this size, we believe we add this position. And so they've done a really great job of defining that for their context, which is so helpful for a campus pastor to know, hey, when we get here, we're going to be able to add additional staff instead of it being different. You know, and they actually, Jeff was here a few weeks ago, and he was telling the story again. I've heard him tell it 5 times probably. Guy comes in, hey, we need a student pastor, and he says, that's great. You know, what do you think? He's like, well, we really need a student pastor. He said, hey, so what's your attendance? You know, and the guy's 250. He's like, well, when that average attendance is 300, we're going to hire a student pastor. Remember You know, and it's like, that's what we go by, that's what we've established. And so, it's helpful to set, all right, a couple more, just a couple more questions, anybody?
So I'd love to hear, I like the rebate approach here. Can we get some funding talk? You know, like what's your funding strategy? How do you guys approach that? Obviously, not just unique, but we'll be able to like, what's your funding plan?
I'll go first. We can just go in order. Then we don't have to. Okay, our funding plan is every year in 2 weeks, we start a series called Heart for the Harvest. It's based very much so on Hillsong's Heart for the House offering. We do a 4-week series. At the end of that series, we do a one-time give for campus expansion. We average taking in that giving about $1.2 million in that weekend. Wow. And that's what we use to launch campuses, to eradicate some debt that we have, as well as to do some other mission type initiatives that we partner with to accomplish each year. So we do it one time, it's a 4-week series, and we actually study our culture. We had a company study our culture, and they actually recommended that that was best for our culture over capital campaigns. And so 4 years ago, we said we're never doing a capital campaign until our culture changes, and we went to that model. And it's been, actually in 4 years, we've taken in more in those type initiatives than we did in the past 2 capital campaigns that we did before that time. So it's really interesting how that was.
So if you are making gifts over time, it's just a
one-time give. One-time gift. And the biggest gift we've ever had in that, just to make it real, I mean, it's not like someone's giving $750,000. You know, the biggest gift we've ever had was the first year. Someone gave $200,000. Past that, we've never had a 6-figure gift to make up that $1 million, basically.
Josh, who's your company that did your culture study?
Strategic Consulting.
Does your church do any other one time? So do you have like a missions weekend? So that's your
all
only
that
thing.
all that comes out of that one week.
All that
comes out of that one
ties
series.
that one ask.
4 weeks, 1 ask.
The whole year.
That's it.
Okay.
Correct. What about you guys?
And I'll give 2 scenarios. At Crosspoint, we do capital campaigns. So every couple of years, we would do a capital campaign, and it would include funding for a new campus. We were discovering some of what you guys, I think, also were wrestling with, in that capital campaigns weren't working great for our culture. And so Crosspoint was in the middle of kind of just shifting some planning and philosophy on that when I left. At Menlo, same thing. They did a capital campaign 7 years ago when they launched the 2 campuses. And it's funny, you would think that's not as big of an issue for Menlo, but actually I have the same dynamics in funding, just at a different scale than I experienced at Crosspoint. So that was actually quite enlightening to me. So you just end up with a different scale because of the economy and so forth. So what we're doing there is we did a capital campaign 7 years ago, launched those 2 campuses, but then since then it's like we've just been kind of living operationally and not, you know, and trying to figure out how do you actually get the surplus for funding and launching. And so right now we're doing kind of a mini campaign of sorts to help us fund the next campus, but we've changed our strategy. I've been working on this since I came in. We've changed our strategy for budgeting, in that we now build the budgets with a threshold for the next campus built into the actual budget. And so therefore we're looking for creating a surplus inside of the operating budget. So we're projecting a need to the congregation that includes a campus that's yet not launched. So we're starting to build that that delta between our actual operating and the future that's going to hopefully give us the funds for continued campus launch.
So your mini campaign is a bridge to that?
Yeah, mini campaign is a bridge to that. Yeah.
Rich?
So at the Meeting House, they do successive capital campaigns. Basically, every 3 years, they call them missions. So they have like, this is our 3-year mission, and they fund a bulk of campuses. So that, like, the first time out, we funded 5 campuses through that first capital campaign. So we said, okay, this is going to pay, basically over the next 3 years, we're going to pay 5 years of capital expansion, our campaign expansion. They followed that pattern. At Liquid, we've done every year we do these Christmas campaigns, and like I said, kind of every other year, because we've been on every other year, we basically are using that to fund the next year's campus. Now, campus number 5, we're shifting that. Our budget next year will be $7.3 million, and so the launch expenses are $350. Our capital outlay is $350. So for the first time, we're just going to write that right into the budget for next year. We're going to tuck it in and not actually have this year's Christmas campaign drive that. Our experience has been that those first months of launch, the incremental cost is offset by the incremental increase in revenue. So the staffing costs and rent and all that has been offset by the revenue we've taken in locally. So the nut is really the capital up front. So this is the first time that we've shoved it into, we're going to actually just budget for it, which for me I'm excited about because that's actually where I want to get to. So it becomes a normal part of our process to do something special to make campuses happen. It's just there's a line there and we spend training.
So your experience is that your campuses become self-funding pretty quick.
That has been our experience, and we work hard on. Not the first one. We lost $10,000 a week. So to do that assumes we get the right facility this fall for next fall. If we can get the right rent on a facility this fall, we'll be able to do that.
Good. All right, we're gonna stop there. I would challenge you to consider something as you create.